What if the poverty you keep wrestling isn't only in your wallet, but also in your breath, your posture, your daily choices, the small, invisible places where fear learned to whisper first? Notice how the shoulders tense when bills arrive, how the mind runs old routes like a path worn into dirt, how the body braces as if danger lives inside numbers and statements and due dates. This isn't failure. This is a nervous system doing what it was taught to do, protect you from the unknown by clinging to the familiar. And yet, what is familiar isn't always wise. Sometimes the familiar is just the loudest voice in a quiet room. I want you to feel something unusual as we begin. Safety. Not the safety of playing small, but the safety of clarity. In the light of clarity, shame has nothing to feed on. In the warmth of compassion, the mind stops fighting itself and starts listening. You are not lazy and you are not broken. You learned survival rules in a season of shortage, and those rules kept you afloat. Now those same rules are costing you the shore. Wisdom does not humiliate the student. Wisdom invites the student to begin again, calmly, clearly, courageously. Solomon calls us to prize understanding as if our life depends on it, because so much of it does. He speaks to the carpenter in you, the planner in you, the steward in you. He calls for order, not dramatic, overnight theatrics, but steady steps that respect sequence. Prepare the field, then build the house. Plant, then harvest. Learn, then act, then refine. When we treat wisdom like treasure, the heart softens its grip on panic, and the mind stops worshipping the emergency. The breath lengthens, the room gets quiet. The next right step becomes visible where it was hidden by noise. There's a kind of poverty that is not about numbers, it is about narration. It is the inner story that tells you that increase is for them, not for you, that your effort is a drop in a desert, that opportunity is a locked door and you weren't given the key. That story is convincing, because it is embodied. Your muscles remember it, your stomach remembers it, your sleep remembers it. The limbic system rehearses the script until it feels like identity. But identity is not a cage. It's a series of practiced choices. Change the practice, and the nervous system learns a new language. Change the story, and the numbers finally have room to change with it. You will hear gentle, firm truths today, not because you need another lecture, but because your mind needs a pattern it can trust. The brain loves consistency. It anchors to repetition. It settles when a rhythm is present. So we will honor rhythm. Thoughts, words, and small actions that repeat with wisdom's cadence. Little by little is not a delay. Little by little is a design. Diligence is not punishment. Diligence is the quiet way freedom enters the room. Order is not rigidity. Order is kindness to your future self. Generosity is not loss. Generosity breaks the scarcity spell by proving that you have something to give. Feel your feet on the ground for a moment. Name one fear, softly, without ceremony, not to glorify it, but to put it in the light where it shrinks. Feel the inhale expand your chest, the exhale loosen the jaw. This is not detour or decoration. This is practical spirituality. The body learning that wisdom is safe, that clarity will not harm it, that abundance does not require panic, that change can be paced and patient and permanent. When the body relaxes, attention stabilizes. When attention stabilizes, choices strengthen. When choices strengthen, life changes. Inside to outside, root to fruit. Solomon's path is not a fantasy. It is a way of seeing and sequencing what is already in your hands. The seed in your pocket is not small, it is exact. Your time is not empty, it is clay. Your skill is not late, it is ready to be sharpened in minutes, not months. When panic says everything now, wisdom answers one honest step again. When shame says you should have known, wisdom answers now you do. Begin. And then, when helplessness asks, what's the point? Wisdom whispers, the point is stewardship. And stewardship held daily dissolves the poverty mindset the way sunrise dissolves fog, slowly at first, then all at once. So ask yourself, gently and truthfully, where does scarcity live in my body right now? And what is it trying to protect? What would become possible emotionally, spiritually, financially, if I chose to protect my future with the same devotion? Let the question sit in your chest like a small, warm lamp. Let it light the first step. Let it steady your breath, little by little. Order before abundance, wisdom before wealth. And as you listen, notice the quiet shift already beginning. Not a storm, not a spectacle, just a wiser rhythm taking root. Calm, clear, compassionate, strong. There is a script that begins before numbers and persists after paychecks. The quiet script that runs beneath the skin. The script that tightens the jaw when a price tag appears and quickens the pulse when you reach for your wallet. Scarcity is not just an idea. It is a posture the body memorizes, a rhythm the breath repeats, a reflex the mind rehearses when the future feels fragile. You did not choose this script. Most likely you inherited it, the way families inherit eye color and proverbs and ways of looking at the world. Today we stand in the threshold between that inherited story and a wiser one, not to judge what kept you alive, but to listen for a truer cadence that leads you forward with dignity and calm. As the light of awareness comes in, the noise of accusation can fade, and what remains is a clear invitation to examine the story without tearing yourself down. When a belief has lived in your nervous system for years, it will feel like truth, even if it is only practice. When a new belief arrives, it will feel like risk, even if it is freedom. Solomon does not shame the student for being new at wisdom. He exalts wisdom as treasure and understanding as shelter, because he knows that what we prize, we keep, and what we keep keeps us. Hold that gently in your chest as you meet the words of this chapter, because the tone here is not a scolding father, but a steady guide, respectful, patient, clear. Notice how the phrase hidden pain lands in your body. It often lands where tension has built a small fortress, between the eyes, along the shoulders, just beneath the ribs. In that hidden place, beliefs take the shape of protection. If I declare I am not the type, I spare myself the risk of trying. If I say money is bad, I grant myself a moral exit from responsibility. The intent is safety. The outcome is a ceiling. Scarcity feels like humility because it bows and apologizes, but it is not humility. It is fear, choosing a costume that looks like virtue. True humility does not shrink your life. It aligns your life with truth, and truth has room for skill, room for stewardship, room for honest prosperity without panic or pretense. Hold the Solomonic anchor like a steady handrail. Get wisdom. Prize understanding. When the old script says, hustle harder, the anchor says, widen your understanding. When the old script says you are behind, the anchor says, begin where you are with what you have and let understanding become your shelter. The mind loosens its grip when it is valued for learning rather than punished for not knowing, and that is why the anchor matters. It gives the nervous system a safe frame for change, where each new insight is not an indictment, but a provision. The phrase belief audit is not a punishment. It is a light turned on in a room you already live in. Writing, money is 10 times is not a test of virtue. It is a map of what your body and mind have been practicing in the dark. The first answers may carry the old voice, and that is expected. Then a quiet shift begins, and the words tool and stewardship and service and seed enter the page like fresh air entering a stale room. This is not theatrics. It is neurobiology meeting wisdom. Language reshaping attention, attention reshaping emotion, emotion reshaping choice. Repetition is not boredom here. Repetition is repatterning, and repatterning is how freedom takes root. The decision filter becomes the daily doorway where panic cannot sneak past. In place of the old reflex, grabbing at anything that promises relief, you hold the filter up to the light and let its questions slow the moment just enough to choose. Does this choice increase wisdom, skill, or stewardship? If the answer is yes, the body feels a subtle settling. If the answer is no, the body feels a subtle tightening. You begin to recognize the difference. Tightening is the old script asking for speed. Settling is the new script asking for sequence. The same bills exist, the same calendar exists, but order enters the room, and with order, the future stops feeling like a cliff and starts feeling like a path. There is tenderness in seeing how many of your decisions were made to avoid shame rather than to cultivate growth. There is tenderness in realizing that much of what looked like self-sabotage was actually self-protection in disguise. The work now is not to attack the protector, but to update it, to offer it better tools. A belief can be loyal to your survival and still be unfit for your flourishing. You honor the loyalty, and then you retire the role. You thank the old script for getting you here, and then you let wisdom write the next scene. Slower, kinder, truer. Let the reflective prompt echo with patience, not pressure. Which belief, if replaced with wisdom, would most immediately change your daily actions? Hear the words "most immediately" as an invitation to simplicity rather than urgency. Hear the words "daily actions" as a reminder that prosperity is a rhythm, not a leap. The nervous system learns by small, repeated exposures to safety. Your future learns by small, repeated exposures to wisdom. Little by little becomes the melody your days hum along to, and with each repetition, the ceiling lifts, not because you forced it, but because the room of your life expanded to match the size of the truth you now hold. As this chapter rests in you, let a single sentence keep you company. The story that capped your ceiling can also open your sky when it is told with wisdom. You are not behind. You are at the doorway, and the handle is familiar. The same hands that once gripped in fear can now open in understanding. The script changes not by spectacle, but by sequence. See the belief. Name the belief, refine the belief, live the belief, repeat. And in that repetition, the old poverty of imagination gives way to stewardship, to skill, to a calm and growing abundance that does not demand applause, only consistency. There is a rhythm so small it almost escapes notice. The quiet click of a clock at the edge of the room, the gentle tap of a drop falling into a bowl, the unhurried march of an ant crossing a windowsill with a fragment larger than its body. The world calls this insignificant. The body calls it possible. Microdiligence does not ignite fireworks. It dissolves resistance, the way water shapes stone, patiently, predictably, peacefully. When life has trained a nervous system to brace for overwhelm, the smaller rhythm feels kinder, more negotiable, more humane. A few minutes of focused presence reduce the static of avoidance. A tiny improvement soothes the alarm bells. A consistent pulse steadies the breath. What looks like too little to the impatient mind becomes enough to the wise heart, because wisdom recognizes what panic cannot. Momentum follows small movement, not the other way around. The shame around laziness often hides a nervous system overloaded by unsorted tasks and undefined steps, not a character flaw. The body delays when the path is fog. The body advances when the path is lit one stone at a time. Emotional neuroscience gives a gentle language for this. Incremental effort lowers threat, repetition builds safety, and safety unlocks attention. The limbic system loosens its grip when predictability arrives. The habit centers learn a new loop when cues and rewards are calm, clear, and consistent. Little by little is not a consolation prize. Little by little is how the mind learns to trust itself again. With that trust, the word diligence stops feeling like punishment and starts sounding like a promise. Quiet, steady, generous. The image of the ant is not a scold, it is a kindness. The ant does not wait for a perfect day or a surge of feeling. It follows a line, it carries a portion, it returns, it repeats. There is dignity in that cadence. The Solomonic anchor honors that dignity by linking profit not to spectacle but to steadiness, not to noise but to preparation. When preparation is honored, the body relaxes into sequence. When sequence is present, decision fatigue eases. When fatigue eases, engagement becomes possible. The result is not dramatic in a single afternoon, yet the horizon shifts, and what once felt immovable begins to inch. The phrase 15-minute skill sprints is a doorway into this horizon shift. 15 minutes lowers the cost of beginning while protecting the depth of focus once begun. The brain accepts the entry because it feels safe. The heart stays because the work starts to breathe. The hands stay because progress, however small, has a texture that is satisfying in itself. The reward is not only what gets produced. The reward is also who you become in the producing, steadier, less reactive, more faithful to your craft than to your moods. The sprint does not punish. It pacifies the fear of endlessness by giving effort a frame, and within that frame, presence blooms. The 1% rule extends the same mercy. One tiny improvement per day is not an evasion of excellence. It is excellence at human scale. The body trusts what it can carry without breaking. The mind trusts what it can track without confusion. A sentence refined, a process simplified, a communication clarified, a client experience smoothed, each small lift compounding like interest in a quiet account. The old story worshipped breakthrough as the only legitimate change. The wiser story honors accumulation. Not a single leap, but 1,000 steps that leave a trail of integrity behind them. Again and again, a little more clarity. Again and again, a little more order. Again and again, a little more value. Hidden beneath this cadence is freedom, macro freedom, the kind that does not vanish when circumstances shift. Freedom born from micro-diligence does not panic when a plan bends. It adapts because the muscles of adaptation have been trained in small motions. It does not resent the size of the day's portion. It respects the portion and carries it with care. It does not confuse urgency with importance because it knows that importance can be honored quietly, under the radar, in minutes that stack into mastery. The ant does not dramatize the distance. It honors the next inch. And in doing so, it conquers distances that theatrics never will. Let the reflective prompt rest in the center of your attention with warmth rather than pressure. What 15-minute compounding action will you do every day for 30 days? The question is not a test, it is a lantern. It lights one stretch of path at a time, and as that path is walked, motivation follows the motion, not the other way around. Little by little becomes the signature of your days. The signature becomes identity. Identity becomes a home where diligence is natural, where effort is not war, where freedom enlarges quietly, steadily, faithfully, like an antline that, when traced from above, reveals a surprising architecture of progress. There is a kind of pressure that does not shout, yet shapes every choice. The low hum behind the day, the constant narrowing of options, the silent recalculation before sleep. Debt feels like that hum. It lives in the background, yet it changes the foreground. It sits on the shoulder of every plan. It turns time into something owed rather than something offered. The body recognizes this long before the mind names it. The stomach tightens at notifications. The breath shortens while looking at statements. The jaw locks as if clenching could manufacture more hours. None of this is moral failure. It is the nervous system responding to a creditor that keeps knocking and to a future that keeps being traded for the present. When the present is purchased with tomorrow's peace, the soul senses a loss it struggles to describe. Solomon gives the language. Servant to the lender does not condemn, it reveals. It names the invisible leash that tugs at decisions, and in naming it, invites dignity back into the room. Dignity does not ignore numbers. Dignity restores agency inside them. Emotional neuroscience echoes this wisdom. Chronic pressure floods the system, and a flooded system defaults to short-term relief over long-term restoration. Shame increases the flood. Clarity drains it. Where shame says, "You did this," Wisdom says, this is where you are and this is what masters do. They demand. Let us see the demand clearly. In seeing it clearly, the body can soften, the breath can lengthen, and the mind can weigh choices without the static of panic. The phrase subtle master fits because the mastery is quiet. It shows up in small hesitations, in the way opportunities feel heavier than they should, in the way creativity shrinks to fit the monthly payment. The expectation breaker matters here. Calling debt normal soothes embarrassment, but it also normalizes servitude. Normalization steals urgency from what deserves honor and sequence. When the anchor is remembered, servant to the lender, something shifts. Not humiliation, not self-attack. A sober acknowledgement that borrowed ease charges interest in freedom, and that interest compounds. The no new chains rule becomes a soft boundary with strong edges. It is not austerity for its own sake. It is the refusal to feed the master that already asks too much. The body often relaxes around this clarity because boundaries reduce uncertainty, and reduced uncertainty calms the limbic alarms. Inside that calm, the order of attack reads less like a verdict and more like a map. Essentials first honors life and stability. Minimums protect integrity and keep doors open. The avalanche concentrates power where it leaks most. A targeted quiet strength rather than scattered effort. A modest emergency buffer restores one of the most spiritual forms of wealth, margin. Because margin gives room to choose, and choosing is where stewardship breathes. There is tenderness in the phrase negotiation scripts, because conversations about money carry shame in their pockets. Yet scripts provide language when the voice trembles. They protect respect on both sides, steady tone, clear request, realistic timeline. They do not promise magic, they create possibility. Lifestyle pruning sits beside them, not as punishment, but as a fast from what numbs the ache of pressure, temporary, intentional, humane. The pruning does not shout self-denial, it whispers alignment, a season where resources and values sit closer together, where spending reflects the story you want to live rather than the anxiety you are trying to escape. Underneath all of this lives a spiritual truth and a neurological one. Spiritually, freedom grows in ordered soil. The soul recognizes the dignity of living within means that honor purpose. Neurologically, predictability creates safety, and safety restores executive function. The mind's ability to plan, to inhibit impulses, to hold a future in view without abandoning the present. As safety grows, shame recedes. As shame recedes, honesty increases. As honesty increases, decisions strengthen. Not spectacle, but sequence. Not panic, but pace. Not bondage, but boundary. Let the reflective prompt rest where fear usually sits and feel the difference. Which single expense, if cut for 90 days, would meaningfully speed your exit from servitude? The word single brings compassion to the moment. The phrase 90 days gives the nervous system an end date, which makes change feel survivable, meaningful, not dramatic, steady, not desperate. When one expense bows out for a season, a quiet affirmation enters. Agency is intact, wisdom is active, and the master is losing ground, inch by inch, decision by decision, dignity by dignity. Order has a texture the body can feel, like a room quietly tidied after a storm, like a desk cleared before work begins, like a field measured and marked before the first seed meets the soil. Without that texture, effort multiplies but fruit thins. The day looks full and the results arrive empty. The nervous system senses this mismatch and grows restless. Busy hands, scattered focus, lingering fatigue that feels older than the morning. It is not laziness, it is disorientation. When tasks have no sequence, every task shouts at once, and the mind spends its strength choosing who to answer instead of doing the work that would steady it. Spiritual insight and emotional neuroscience meet here. The soul thrives where meaning is ordered, and the brain calms where steps are clear. Solomon's voice cuts through the fog with a builder's clarity. Prepare the field, then build the house. Plans of the diligent lead to abundance. These are not slogans, they are scaffolds. They protect from the illusion that more hours will fix what only order can heal. In the body, order lowers threat. Lowered threat widens attention. Widened attention sees which action belongs first, which belongs next, and which belongs not at all. When sequence appears, the compulsion to multitask loosens its hold, and energy stops leaking into constant switching. The work stops being loud. It becomes quiet, then precise, then kind. The phrase "hustle without sequence" names a wound many carry, the ache of pouring heart and hours into motion that does not multiply. The mind confuses intensity for effectiveness. The body pays the price with cortisol spikes and a roaming anxiety that makes even rest feel unsafe. The expectation breaker lands softly but firmly. Not more fuel, more flow, not more speed, more order. When order takes the wheel, the nervous system releases its death grip on urgency, and the day begins to breathe in 4 counts. Prepare, place, proceed, pause. The Solomonic anchor lends that breath a foundation. First the field, then the house. First the plan, then the abundance that plans make possible. Within that frame, the weekly fieldwork block becomes a sanctuary. There is a reverence to beginning with prospecting, practice, and product, touching the living edges of the work before consuming anything about it. The body recognizes this reverence and settles. Attention gathers like light through a lens. The old reflex to check, scroll, compare loses intensity because sequence has already assigned meaning to the hour. Fieldwork first. Learning still matters, but not as a way to postpone creation. It enters the day as part of a rhythm, not as an escape from it. The sequence ritual, learn, build, sell, refine, feels almost musical when held with patience. Learning warms the hands. Building gives them something to hold. Selling lets the work meet the world. Refining honors what the meeting revealed. Skipping steps scrambles the melody. Repeating steps deepens it. Emotional neuroscience approves. Predictable loops reduce decision fatigue and preserve willpower for the one thing that needs it most. Spiritual wisdom smiles as well, because this ritual respects the dignity of each action and the humility of improvement. Nothing is beneath you when it serves the sequence. Nothing is above you when it flows from the sequence. There is a tenderness in delay reward. It treats celebration as a sacred echo of completion rather than a substitute for it. The child in the nervous system learns that comfort is safe and certain, but linked to the right moment. The adult learns that integrity tastes sweeter when it follows through. This is not austerity. It is alignment. Pleasure does not disappear, it ripens. The body remembers this ripening and begins to trust the path that leads to it. Trust reduces the craving for shortcuts, and shortcuts lose their shine. The reflective question at the end of this chapter carries a quiet power because it touches the doorway where most days turn. What's the next field task you must do before you allow any comfort task? The words next and before invite the mind into sequence without pressure, into timing without shame. In that single moment of ordering, chaos loosens. The room of your life feels larger. The field receives attention. The house to come no longer carries the lonely weight of being built on air. Order, then increase. Seed, then harvest. Plan, then abundance, and beneath it all a calmer breath, proof that wisdom has entered and taken its gentle, rightful place. There is a temptation that disguises itself as hope, the dream of a single moment that fixes everything, a windfall that erases the past and writes a new future in bold and instant ink. The body loves the surge this fantasy offers. It is a sugar rush for the nervous system, a bright spike that promises relief. Yet when the spike fades, the same patterns remain, the same skills still ask to be grown, the same stewardship still waits at the door. Little by little speaks more softly, but it feeds more deeply. It does not inflame the system, it nourishes it. It trains attention to notice small wins. It teaches emotion to recognize slow safety. It shows the soul that blessing often enters through many humble doorways rather than one grand gate. Solomon counsels us to divide, to diversify, to sow in the morning and in the evening, because we do not know which seed will take. And that uncertainty is not a threat, but an invitation. The brain, when soothed by predictability and sequence, can embrace this invitation without panic. It learns to prefer the stability of several modest flows over the drama of a single, fragile river. Spiritually, this posture honors trust over control. Neurologically, it lowers the stakes of any one action, which reduces avoidance and opens engagement. 7 streams do not dilute you. They surround you with gentle current so that if one runs dry, the others keep you moving. The phrase all or nothing carries a particular weight in the chest. The breath holds, as if life is a single throw of the dice. When the mind insists on all, the body hears or nothing and freezes. Action collapses under the fear of imperfect starts. The expectation breaker steps in like a gentle teacher. Small and honest grows, small and honest endures. It refuses the adrenaline of the miraculous in favor of the medicine of steady practice. Over time, the nervous system begins to anticipate the quiet satisfaction of incremental gain, and trust replaces dread. Progress becomes a pulse, not a performance. The tiny portfolio offers a humane scale for growth. 3 skills, 1 offer each. Just enough variety to diversify, just enough focus to avoid fragmentation. The body relaxes when it sees edges around effort. The mind engages when it can imagine delivery without overwhelm. A service that draws on a strength already present. A productized service that frames that strength with repeatable steps. A micro-digital offer that converts knowledge into something helpful and light to carry. No heroics, only honest value. The soul recognizes the integrity in this and warms to the work. The 90-day experiment rhythm brings mercy to evaluation. 90 days is long enough to see a signal, short enough to preserve hope. Clear indicators keep anxiety from rewriting the story midstream. You do not need a verdict every hour when you have a horizon to meet. Emotionally, this protects from the lash of impatience. Spiritually, it honors seasons. At the end of the experiment, the question is simple. What compounded? That which compounded stays. That which did not is blessed and released. No drama, no shame, only stewardship that listens to reality and aligns the next step accordingly. The quiet power of automatic percentages is that it forms character while it forms accounts. First fruits or giving cultivates gratitude and loosens the grip of fear. Investment honors the future and teaches patience. A skill fund ensures that growth is resourced, not merely wished for. Automating these percentages takes the strain off willpower and places virtue into the bones of your month. The habit becomes the teacher. Over time, the numbers begin to echo the person you are becoming. Generous, forward-looking, competent, and the echo itself becomes motivation. Notice how this chapter gathers the threads of those before it. The ant's cadence inside the daily offers, the order of field before harvest inside the portfolio, the dignity of freedom inside the boundaries you set with your percentages. Little by little is no longer an apology, it is a signature. Streams do not roar, they persist. They braid, they carve canyons not by fury but by fidelity. In your body, fidelity feels like lower shoulders, clearer eyes, steadier mornings. In your spirit, it feels like trust arriving early and staying late. Let the reflective prompt rest in the place where you usually wait for perfect conditions and listen to the quieter question beneath it. Which modest, honest stream could you launch this month with what you already know? Modest means survivable for your schedule and your nerves. Honest means aligned with your actual strengths and the needs in front of you. This month means now, but now without pressure, now with kindness. When one stream begins, the story changes shape. When 2 or 3 join it, the room of your life fills with the sound of water finding a way. A life changes when it gains a rhythm that the body can trust. The kind that greets the morning with clarity, steadies the afternoon with focus, and closes the evening with peace. This rhythm does not shout, it hums. It does not demand, it invites safety. Emotional neuroscience would call it regulation. Spiritual language would call it order and wisdom. In that spirit, a gentle sequence takes shape, not as a performance, but as a posture that your nervous system can hold without bracing. The day opens with Belief Audit linked to decision filter, not as a test of virtue, but as a light in the room where thoughts once ran unchallenged. 10 quiet lines that begin with "money is" reveal the story the body has been carrying. The filter, "does this choice increase wisdom, skill, or stewardship?" offers a doorway where panic once rushed through. The pairing is tender and exact, a compassionate look within and a sober lens for what comes next. Shame loses its footing when clarity stands without accusation, and the mind begins to relax into the truth that understanding is shelter. As the day stretches forward, the work gathers itself around 15-minute skill sprints woven with the 1% rule, a cadence sized for a human nervous system that flourishes under predictability and attainable progress. 15 minutes asks little at the threshold and offers much once you enter. The 1% becomes a promise to the anxious parts that prefer avoidance over overwhelm. The result is a steadier pulse. Attention engages without burning out. Effort repeats without resentment, and dignity grows because the craft is touched daily with care. Small improvements accumulate like quiet interest. The identity of someone who shows up replaces the old identity of someone who waits for motivation, and the body learns that safety and growth can share the same hour. The week, in its wider arc, holds no new chains rule beside order of attack, a pairing that lowers ambient threat and returns agency to the heart. Refusing new consumer debt calms the background siren that pushes choices toward the nearest relief. Ordering essentials, minimums, and an avalanche on the highest interest reframes power where it was leaking most. As space appears, the map widens to include weekly Fieldwork Block, prospecting, practice, product before consumption, so that creation leads and consumption serves. The soul recognizes the reverence in this sequence. It is the farmer stepping into the field before the feast. And where celebration once arrived too early as a way to numb anxiety, delay reward meets the moment as a quiet ceremony of completion, reminding the child inside that comfort is certain and better when it follows through. In the month's longer breath, the path extends into tiny portfolio, 90-day experiment, and automatic percentages, each reinforcing the truth that prosperity grows from stewardship more than spectacle. 3 skills, 1 offer each. Keep variety from becoming fragmentation and focus from becoming fear. The 90-day horizon gives change a compassionate container, long enough to see signal without exhausting hope, and the review becomes a conversation with reality rather than a verdict on worth. Automatic percentages, first fruits or giving, investment, and a skill fund place virtue into motion where willpower once strained. Generosity loosens scarcity's grip. Investment honors tomorrow without abandoning today, and the skill fund protects growth from becoming a wish. Numbers begin to bear witness to the person you are becoming, and that witness becomes its own encouragement. Threaded through all of this is a felt sense that the body can finally exhale. The morning holds meaning without hurry. The afternoon carries effort without panic. The evening lands without the ache of unfinished promises. This is what practical spirituality sounds like when it moves through a nervous system. Beliefs illuminated rather than condemned. Choices filtered rather than forced. Work approached in humane portions. Money ordered so freedom can breathe. Experiments framed so courage can return, and percentages set so character forms even on tired days. The repetition is not noise, it is nourishment. Little by little is no longer a compromise, it is a vow. If a single sentence could summarize this chapter's heart, it might sound like a blessing spoken over the rhythm you now carry. May Belief Audit and Decision Filter keep your mind honest and kind. May 15-minute skill sprints and the 1% rule keep your craft alive and humane. May no new chains rule and order of attack keep your freedom growing. May weekly fieldwork block, sequence ritual, and delay reward keep your work aligned with dignity. And may tiny portfolio, 90-day experiment, and automatic percentages keep your future resourced with grace. In that blessing, the poverty mindset loses its stage, and wisdom, quiet, steady, merciful, takes its place. The ant walks across the day with a portion in its mouth, and something in you recognizes the dignity of that image. It is not grand, not noisy, not urgent. It is faithful. Your nervous system understands this cadence because it does not threaten it. Micro-diligence is small enough to begin and real enough to matter. One carried fragment becomes a path. One carried path becomes a pattern. The pattern becomes a quiet freedom that does not depend on moods or miracles. In the presence of that steady motion, shame loses its performance and panic loses its microphone. What remains is a hum, the sound of effort you can hold without bracing. Beyond the windowsill where the ant passes, there is a field, a plain of unbroken soil waiting for sequence. First the measuring line, then the furrow, then the seed. This is the wisdom that steadies breath. Prepare the work outside, then build the house. The body softens when it senses this order, because order lowers the cost of beginning and gives each action a place to belong. Emotional neuroscience names the relief. Predictability reduces threat, and reduced threat frees attention for the next right step. Spirit names it too, humility that honors timing, patience that honors process. In that soil, effort does not scatter, it takes root. Beyond the field, water appears. Not a single river roaring with drama, but several quiet streams braiding their way through the land. Each stream is honest and modest, moving within its banks, making a way where the ground seemed rigid. They do not compete, they cooperate. When one thins, the others keep singing. This is what little by little sounds like when it becomes livelihood. A portfolio of honest flows, carrying provision from different directions, generosity planted like wildflowers along the banks, investments deepening the channels, skills refreshing the current. The land learns the language of water, and the future stops feeling like a drought. Seen together, these images form a map of the wise life. The ant's line is the practice that teaches the heart to trust itself again. The field's order is the sequence that turns effort into fruit. The 7 streams are the design that protects freedom from the weather. Ant, field, streams, motion, sequence, provision. When the day feels loud, the map returns you to a rhythm beneath the noise. When the mind fears it is late, the map shows a path that does not require sprinting. When the soul wonders if abundance can be trusted, the map answers with a landscape shaped by fidelity. Small steps, tended soil, converging waters. Quietly, steadily, the poverty mindset loses its stage and a wiser story takes its place. One that your body can recognize, your spirit can bless, and your life can carry without strain. There comes a quiet hour when the noise of striving thins and what remains is a simple question: what kind of person am I becoming as I handle time, skill, and provision? The body recognizes this hour because the shoulders lower on their own, the breath finds an honest pace, and the heart listens without rushing to fix. In that listening, the threads of this journey gather, beliefs brought into light, small steps honored, pressure unmasked, order restored, streams begun, a rhythm shaped by mercy rather than fear. Solomon's wisdom feels less like a lecture and more like a lamp, the kind that makes the room you already live in visible enough to be rearranged with dignity. The poverty mindset often pretends to be safety, but it is smaller than the life your soul can carry. Wisdom does not argue with it. Wisdom replaces it, not with spectacle, but with cadence. Not with a single grand turn, but with 1,000 honest turns that keep pointing in the same direction. Emotional neuroscience describes the same landscape in different words. New patterns settle as the nervous system finds predictability, and predictability frees attention for what matters. Spiritual language meets it halfway. Understanding becomes shelter, stewardship becomes worship, order becomes a form of love extended to the future you. If a mirror were held up now, it would not only show a face, it would show a pattern. The ant's steady line, the field measured before the walls rise, the 7 streams weaving provision with humility. That pattern is not fragile. It survives ordinary disappointments, bends without breaking when the weather shifts, and grows quieter rather than louder under stress. The mind, once pulled toward emergencies, learns to prefer the gentle authority of sequence. The body, once braced for scarcity, begins to store a different memory. Days that move with purpose, evenings that land without a knot, mornings that do not dread their own names. Some stories close with fanfare. This one closes with a blessing that has been arriving line by line, little by little. Order before abundance. Wisdom before wealth. Stewardship over spectacle. Each phrase sits where panic once sat and changes the atmosphere. The numbers may not be where you want them yet, but the story that guides them has changed, and stories, when tended, shape outcomes. The mind can learn a new way to think about money. The heart can learn a new way to feel about growth. The spirit can learn a new way to trust a future that is being built with care. One final question lingers, not as pressure, but as permission. When your life is remembered by the people who shared it, what quiet rituals of wisdom will they say shaped your days? Let that question travel with you like a soft light in your chest. It will not demand, it will remind. And as it reminds, a gentle confidence rises, the kind that does not need to prove itself because it is too busy becoming itself. This is the opposite of the poverty mindset. This is a life that knows where it stands, who it serves, and how it grows. Steadily, humbly, wisely in the company of understanding that does not wither.